Hello, angels, and welcome to episode 3 of Sense, Feel, Transform. In this episode, our conversation is going to be carrying on very directly from the last episode. And for that reason, this episode will be a lot more structured than previous episodes, because last episode I made some promises to you as to what I would cover. And at the top of this episode, I'm going to just give you a step-by-step, a little rap sheet of what we're going to cover today. And I'm going to start right the hell now. The first thing we're going to touch on, and we'll do this several times throughout the episode, is actionable practices for regulating the nervous system. The second thing that we'll be covering is, what is the nervous system? What does it do? And how does it get activated, overstressed, and dysregulated? Then we'll talk about how to give it the love and attention it needs to regulate, and what a dysregulated nervous system looks like and why it's a problem for you, for everyone in your life. And lastly, we're going to talk about what incredible things can happen when you are living life from a regulated nervous system. And if there's time, I will also just go into what exactly somatic coaching does, how, as a somatic practitioner, I engage with my clients and their somas to intervene, to create interventions that can help regulate the nervous system and generally change the somatic shaping of your soma in such a way that it enlivens you, that it reconnects you to the infinite resources within your system that, for the most part, people do not have access to through no fault of their own, and entirely thanks to the fact that their nervous system is overstressed and, if not totally dysregulated. So we're going to start actually with a very quick somatic practice. We're going to go right into the deep end here with something that you can practice at home anytime. Obviously, this will become apparent very quickly if you're driving right now or operating heavy machinery, chopping vegetables. I would urge you to either pull over or just come back to this exercise, this practice. So I'm going to invite you to remove any glasses you have on your face and to just move away from the screen if you're watching this, or any screen that you have in front of you. It might be a phone, perhaps you're scrolling whilst you're listening. Just to close your eyes and rest your eyes behind your eyelids. Often we're scanning, right? We're scanning with our eyes. We're scanning our environment. We're scanning our phone screens, our computer screens. And we don't realize that not only are we looking, but we're actually really we're forcefully using our eyes, and when we close our eyes we can continue to do that. So just inviting you behind your closed lids to practice resting your eyes. If you can look totally away from a screen, I encourage you to do that. And just plant your feet nice and square, solid on the ground, as you would in any grounding practice. And take a couple of deep, comfortable breaths, no force. Letting that air out with a light or a deep sigh, which really lets your nervous system know we're safe to relax here. And a softening of our eyes is letting our nervous system know we're safe to relax here. I just invite you to bring attention to your jaw. If there's any tension there, can you soften and loosen your jaw? Which is another place where we carry stress, and which, when clenched, is another piece of information telling our nervous system that we are prepared to fight or flee or freeze or fawn. Now I'm just going to invite you to take the heels of your hands in the palms of your hands here and just place them gently over your eyelids. And just pushing with slight firmness, no harm done, pushing the heels of your hands into your eyelids and your eyes so that you feel that pressure. And keep taking those nice, relaxing breaths. And let your head fall forward into your hands. And as you do this, you should feel your head resting in your hands. Your hands comfortably holding the weight of your head as your elbows rest on your chest. So you're creating a natural kind of resting place for your head. You might notice colors, lights, shapes as you breathe, and just view with a completely, whilst your eyes are not working, right? They're seeing, they're there, but they're not working hard. Just enjoy being in this place where there's nothing more to do, and just be here. And when you're ready, with a nice deep breath, you can come back. Open your eyes, stretch. Allow yourself to feel refreshed, calmed. And if we were in a coaching session, I would ask, how do you feel now? How was that? And since you're not here, I'll just report a little bit on my embodied experience of that, my somatic experience. It felt very calming, soothing, and restful to be in that darkness, resting my eyes, resting against my body. I felt soothed. And as I come back now, I feel grounded, and I'm also just a little aware of some discomfort, some tension in my shoulders and neck. And that's a place that I tend to feel. That's the place that I tend to feel most regularly, some kind or any kind of discomfort or activity. It's a pretty typical place for us to carry stress or memory. And for me, that is a sign, as I kind of, in that practice, sink into the body and I take away so many of the stimulations from outside that tend to occupy my attention and to pull me outward, out of my body and into the world around me, keep me distracted, even so in my head and my attention that my body is not something that I feel particularly aware of, that when I practice coming into and being in my own system, and like as we just did with that small practice, then my body's signals, my body's language becomes something that I can notice and that I can then attend to. So in a somatic coaching session, if I were the client and I had noticed that discomfort, that activation in my neck and shoulders, that would be an interesting place for us to go, for my somatic coach to lead me into. Okay, so you're feeling some tension, something wants your attention in your neck and shoulders. Do you feel comfortable going there and investigating? To which I would say, hell yes, let's do it. And that's when we would enter into somatic inquiry. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We are in this somatic soup right now, right? This what's been called body psychotherapy. And it's not a new principle. It's not a new methodology. In fact, it's not even arguably, it's ancient. It is very much grounded in ways of being that we have forgotten. We've forgotten in our modern Western culture. So that's one actionable practice for regulating the nervous system. And I want to talk to you now about implicit and explicit memory and how that relates to what the nervous system is, what it does, and how it gets activated and overstressed. So our bodies, our somas, as we've described, our entire human organism, which is far more complex than just a brain and a body. The body in its own right has other intelligence centers. The heart and the gut are two of its main intelligence centers. For women, the womb and the yoni are another intelligence center. That area for any person with a womb or not is in its own way an intelligence center. And the nervous system is what connects all of these intelligence centers, and it's kind of like the information highway of our bodies. So implicit and explicit memory are the two different kinds of memory that we retain in our bodies. With explicit memory, these are the memories that we hold in our minds. These are the memories this is kind of information that we think about when we think about memory. So explicit memory includes things like facts and figures, like lessons that we've learned over time regarding not to put our hands under boiling hot water. It also includes the narrative stories of our lives. So any memory that our conscious mind is able to draw from in our day-to-day lives belongs to the explicit part of our memory. And our conscious minds, where our explicit memory is stored, makes up just 5% of our mind. The other 95% is our unconscious. And this is where the implicit memory lives, in our unconscious. Now, the implicit memory is memory that we are not aware of, right? It's also where the unconscious is also where the information or the command centers for our breathing, for our heart beating, for all of the different systems that function in our body to keep operating as they do. this is all stored in the unconscious, right? We don't have to think about or remember how to breathe for the most part. We just do. We don't actively, consciously beat our own heart. It just does. So these are in the unconscious. These are arguably implicit memories. Other implicit memories would be things that are in our shadow, okay? Things that we remember but are not consciously aware of. So this could include, well, it includes any number of things. If you think about the way that we experience our world, our conscious minds are a filter, that our minds are a filtering device, right? If our conscious minds are just make up 5% of our being, imagine how much stimulation from the outside world we have to filter in order to be able to process what's happening around us. And this is where we talk about, manifestation, mindset, what we perceive or what we believe about our lives and what's possible for us in our minds becomes manifest in the world outside of us. These filters, these unconscious filters at work. So our unconscious is receiving more information about our world than it would be possible for us to actually be able to understand, experience, process, and live through. And so our implicit memory is made up of a lot of the stuff that we don't even notice, okay? But it's also made up of those experiences that have been really nice, really great, really happy, and really terrible and really shitty. And not in the way of the narrative sense of our memory where you say, okay, I remember my 21st birthday party or the year I turned 21, this happened and this happened and this happened. In our implicit memory, it's beyond language. It's felt sense. It's how a person responded to you in a queue one day when you were having a really bad day, and how this either made you feel faith in humanity or feel a distrust of all people outside of your immediate circle. It's very much made up of the experiences that you had from birth to age 7, when you basically were just an unconscious creature. You were a sponge to all of the information that came into your life, and you embodied the information that came to you, that came at you, as means of shaping your understanding of the world around you. So if you were traumatized as a child, in any way, shape, or form, that the way that happened, the information that comes to you in that experience, the feelings of powerlessness that you experienced in order to be traumatized, that lives within you. That exists in your implicit memory, whether you were able to, you might have been 4 months old. So you were 4 months old and you were in a car seat and your parents had a car accident and your mother was distraught. Your parents were both in shock. It was a pretty bad accident. Just by being in that experience, being held by your mother, by your parents, you would have soaked up all of that experience into your body, into your physical intelligence centers, and that information, which your body deems so critical, would be stored there as important information for your future and continued survival. And this makes up the majority of our behaviors and decisions when we are not living mindfully. When we're mindful, we can distinguish between a rational, logical response to an external stimulus and something and a trigger. right? And a trigger is really how we identify what is in our implicit memory, what is in our shadow. Many of us cannot even identify when we're being triggered. Many more of us can now than even 5 years ago. But still, the majority of people on this planet are living their lives being triggered on a daily basis, which literally means they're coming into contact with something in their present day lives that is triggering a stored implicit memory that they're not actually consciously aware of. And that past experience, which is stored as memory in your body's unconscious, is informing how they respond to the present moment, even if what's happening in the present moment has nothing to do with or is nothing like that experience. So to carry on the case of the baby who was in a car accident at such a young age, they're not going to remember that. They might have been informed that that happened, but even say this person grows up, they're now a 30-year-old man, and they were never told about this accident. It went into them. It was forgotten or whatever by their parents, or just not informed of them of, and they have this low-lying discomfort, tension, and just distrust of cars, of their safety in a vehicle. They would not know even that this was unusual or unnecessary, right? Because when you're 2 months old, a year old, 5 years old, your experience is so early, and you're so fresh, and you're so unable to compare this to previous experience that it becomes to define your reality. And this is why it's much easier to heal trauma in the body if it's experienced as an adult than it is as a child. Because from 0 to 7, any traumatic event or everything that you're experiencing, it shapes and defines us, because we are being shaped and defined in such a significant way. We are soaking up everything in our world, and it is and understanding the world through all of those experiences. Whereas if we're in a car accident at 32, we've already lived a long life previous to that, in which we know how it feels to drive safely, to be safely transported in a car without a terrifying experience happening. And so it's not embedded in our view of reality, okay? So that's implicit and explicit memory. And you can see in terms of the trigger how the nervous system plays into this, because when that implicit memory is triggered, that's literally the nervous system operating to say, hey, we got to get into survival mode here, right? Every time you are triggered by something, whether it be a person saying something that you felt was rude or nasty or inappropriate, or you get in a car after an accident, or you look at your bank balance and it's low, and that's been a problem for you for a long time, or something that you grew up, living in financial scarcity or chaos. And so these things are very triggering for you. Every time you're triggered, that is your nervous system picking up on a piece of implicit memory that says danger, and then reacting accordingly. right? Your nervous system kicks into gear. It says, okay, my implicit memory, my amazing intelligence system tells me that this is dangerous, that this is a perilous this is a perilous scenario. Let's go. We have to fight, we have to flee, we have to freeze or fawn in that order. It will try in that hierarchy of actions to run away, to fight, to run away, to freeze or to appease. So this is what your nervous system does. Your nervous system is your information highway. It transmits information from your brain to your body and how to act, how to respond to the world. And it also, as it's a two-way radio, it receives information from outside through your senses and takes it to the brain. So when we think of like logical conscious thinking, we think of okay, this person said something to me and they seem quite hostile, not in like a violent way, but just like in their intentions. That information comes up to my brain. How consciously or however consciously or unconsciously process that information, and then I respond accordingly by leaving or by pushing back or whatever. That's a relatively conscious reaction to a situation. But your nervous system and your body's intelligence is so much quicker than necessarily your conscious response is, right? How quickly do you react to touching a hot pan? Way quicker than it would take for that information to go all the way through your nervous system into your brain and back out through your hand, right? Because we have this implicit memory and this somatic intelligence that supersedes or at least deeply complements the intelligence of our brains. And this is where we get to really engage with not just mindfulness and consciousness as ways of slowing down the mental response to our environments and our triggers, but also we get to open to and invite more of this intelligence, this innate intelligence that our wider system has, that does not even require the intervention of the mind, which we know is not always our ally, right? Our mind can be a place that isn't always safe, that isn't always nourishing, that certainly doesn't always have our best interests at heart. So we've talked about how the nervous system gets activated. Let's talk about how this activation can tip over into stress and overstress. So when we're triggered, when we are made, when stress occurs, we are beginning the stress response cycle. We are activated, and our bodies are poised to address and complete their response to stress. If you were a gazelle on the plains, being stalked by a lion, you would notice, ideally, this gazelle gets to live. So you would notice, you would become aware of the danger. Your body instinctively would jump into action, survival mode. It would, in the case of a gazelle, not turn to fight the lion. It would flee. It would run away. If the lion were to catch you having tried to flee, you might fawn, you might freeze or flop down and pretend to be dead. And in that way, escape its grip, potentially, and run again and escape. When you have escaped as a gazelle, you shake it off, right? You see animals all the time complete some response and then shake their bodies. Ugh. That shaking is their innate gesture to themselves, physical gesture to their body, that the danger is over and that they can now release and complete that stress, that survival response. And if you see that gazelle, it'll just go back to grazing. As soon as it's out of the danger, it'll go back to grazing. What it won't do is sit there feeling hysterical, calling over every one of its companions, its friends, its family members, having nightmares for weeks, months, years later. And the reason for that, aside from the fact that obviously it does not it does not share a lot of human qualities, the reason for that is that it has successfully completed the stress cycle. So we humans tend to not really understand the stress cycle. We don't even really know that stress is just a response that is a natural response to our need to adapt to any moment. That is all stress actually is. When you feel that flare in your body of like, woof, okay, I need to respond to this, or I feel stressed, I don't want to deal with this, I hate talking about this, I hate looking at this. That's your body being ready to act, being ready to adapt to the situation in an appropriate way. But because our minds are sentient, unlike the gazelles, we have critical thinking, we have a lot of narratives going on, we have this implicit and explicit memory that we draw on to help shape, define, and just understand our present reality. All of these things, these stories, these ways of feeling uncomfortable come in. And so instead of adapting and responding and completing the stress cycle, we tend to try to repress the experience, right? And you think about it in terms of a stressful day at work. How many, I'll stop there for a moment. I'll come back to that because that's actually something that is more insidious. So if we were to respond to that feeling, for instance, I need to pay my bills this month. Often, because we're feeling stretched, under-resourced, we tend to avoid things that don't feel good, right? They feel uncomfortable, they feel unpleasant, they feel unsafe. And so we avoid them, or we repress them, or we push down the feelings. We try to distract ourselves, right? We feel that feeling. We're like, oh, I don't even know if I have enough money to pay my bills right now. I just don't even want to get into it. I'm just going to go on my phone or watch Netflix. And you can answer this question for yourself. How often does that actually take you out of that feeling of stress? How often are you actually just distracting yourself, trying to cover up or trying to repress, trying to muffle feelings that remain? This is why taking action, empowered action, turning towards the things that we want to avoid in life is so fucking powerful. It's so empowering and liberating. And it's literally the last thing that human beings want to do, is turn towards what they've been turning away from in their lives, whether it be their finances, a problem in one of their relationships, a situation with work, something that they feel guilty about, something that they feel ashamed about. We have so much stored from our past because we've been taught to shut down, to push down, to repress, to close and turn away from. We have not been taught that emotions are welcome and healthy and a fabulous way of processing your experience anywhere and everywhere, right? Emotions have been shamed. We've not been taught that being able to articulate our inner landscape is a virtue. Basically, many thanks to thousands of years of colonialization and patriarchy, we've been told to shut the fuck up, get on with it. And that is all of that shutting up, shutting down, pushing past, going beyond, forcing, ignoring, denying, all that cognitive dissonance, all that embodied stress that's not been allowed to release, it builds. It gathers. It collects. It amasses. And I mean, how many times do you think we can do this before our nervous system's completely fucking shot to bits? Because now, all of those feelings that you've tried to run away from, far from having escaped them, you've literally stored them inside of you. Far from getting away from them, you've kept them forever. And so the body becomes a site of trauma, of conflict, of danger. Everything that you want to avoid because you're feeling afraid or whatever, it's all in you. And therefore creating and amplifying the very things, the very experiences that you're trying to avoid, that you're trying to get away from, that you don't want to experience. And by all means, we don't like pain. We don't like discomfort. We're creatures of comfort, even though comfort is not actually what is good for our hearts and our souls. And to go back to the very stressful work situation, we are in a situation in our modern day lives where we're constantly being bombarded by stress, too much stress. Our culture does not facilitate a healthy body, a healthy soma. It tends to exacerbate whatever else is going on in there, which is why we now are talking about work trauma in our culture, because this culture of capitalism, which just favors the bottom line and is not concerned with the well-being or the sustainability of its human elements, is extremely damaging to us as human beings. So over time, over a lifetime, your nervous system is responding to all of these signals that your implicit memory is reacting to the outside world, saying danger here, danger here, danger here, because it's literally storing like gunpowder all of these past experiences that have not left your body. So a single small experience can set off a whole explosion of triggers and nervous system responses. And eventually we go from overstressed to traumatized. Because even small stresses, when we're constantly barraged by them, eventually become traumas. And a multitude of small traumas become what Peter Levine, author of Awakening the Tiger, describes as big T traumas. And those are the defining traumas of our life that really do define our lives and take many, many years to heal from. So what's so bad about this, aside from the fact that you might be triggered here, there, and everywhere? Well, once the nervous system is overstressed, it's operating in survival mode at all times. That means that your body is constantly cycling from fight to flight to freeze to fawn to fight to flight to freeze to fawn to fight to fawn to freeze to flight to it's bouncing all over the fucking place without ever coming to rest in regulation. And I don't think I need to go too far into what that looks like for the ways that you operate in your life. If you are constantly operating from survival mode. And having done that myself for many, many years, I can say I did not make calm and grounded, clear-headed decisions. I was at times unable to be vulnerable and open in my relationships. I met my reality as though it were a battlefield. Every day felt like a fight for survival. For my mental health, for my sense of well-being, I felt constantly on a precipice, constantly in danger of failing, of fucking up, of being impoverished. There was just this constant sense of threat. It was so generalized that everything, every day, felt like a fight for survival. We do not do our best work from this place. We do not make great decisions. We do not build beautiful, rich, delicious lives, relationships, careers, homes from this place. It infects everything and it defines everything. And we'll go into that more another time. Let's talk about how to give your nervous system love and attention and allow it to regulate. How do we get out of this cycle once we're in it? Obviously, depending on how acute it is, one important way that we get out of this kind of a cycle is to work with a professional who can facilitate, support, and offer tools to regulate your nervous system and to just generally, regulating your nervous system is literally changing your relationship to your reality. So it helps to have other people outside of you to not just be accountable to and learn from, but also to witness the truth that reality can feel very different. Because in this state, it's near impossible to believe that things can be different. So having someone who has done the work, walked the path, who knows exactly how you're feeling and where you're operating from, and can really truly vouch for the fact that it doesn't have to be this way, is a huge one. But beyond that, a few ways to help regulate your nervous system on a daily basis are to meditate, to take cold showers, to practice mindful observation of your reactions and behaviors, and invite your friends, your loved ones to help give you reflection in those moments. You can look at diet too, processed foods, alcohol, drugs, all of these things that numb you or that you might be using as a coping mechanism or a numbing agent are not helping. Those things are exacerbating the issue. So it's a kind of a dual process of asking, how am I numbing? What am I avoiding? And how can I show my nervous system that these things that I'm avoiding are not actually dangerous? And so we did an exercise at the beginning of this episode, and I'm just going to show you another very simple one right now that is doable at any time, even when you're driving. And it's called back breathing. So it literally is as simple as planting your feet as we did before, nice and square on the ground, your palms on the tops of your thighs. And breathing in nice and deeply through your nose, down into the back of your ribs. And you can place your hands, your thumbs at the back bottom of your rib cage. So you have your hands kind of lying on your hips. Breathe down so that your breath reaches your thumbs there. In and out. Breathe out through your mouth, nice and slow, nice and long. Let your eyebrows uncrease. Let your muscles relax. And this is just another simple way that you're illustrating to your body by mindfully, consciously choosing to trust and believe that you are not in danger. Right? There are very few moments in our modern day lives, I hope, that we're actually in physical or very real danger. Most of it is in the ether, right? It's stress, it's past trauma, it's repressed emotion, it's anxiety, confusion, it's the news cycle. These things that are not ultimately a danger to your life, your body is receiving as such. So when we can inform our bodies with a cold shower, with a breathing exercise, by choosing not to numb out when we feel discomfort, but feel the discomfort and regulate with our breathing, with a cold shower again, with one of these embodiment practices that I'll continue to share with you, we are showing ourselves that we are actually okay. And we are therefore in that way regulating our nervous system, allowing our nervous system to come back into balance. And this is the last thing that I will cover here, is what incredible things can come from having a regulated nervous system. And I'll speak personally to this because last episode I talked about how it took me 5 years to launch a podcast. And how much that had to do with my fear of failure, my fear of being seen, a fear of being heard, a fear of being told I was. It had to do with my general sense that I was not good enough, that I was not interesting enough, that I didn't have anything interesting, useful, really valuable to say. I was also dealing with such a heightened fight survival mode sense that I felt constantly in danger of not being able to pay my bills, of going deep into debt, of just generalized danger, fear, anxiety. It stopped me from taking action when I wanted to take action. It stopped me from doing things like learning to drive finally, getting my license, which I am now in the process of doing, getting back in the driver's seat of my life. It stopped me from making bold decisions, from believing in the actual possibility of my dreams. It isolated me from my friends and my family because I was so in survival mode that I was just trying to get through, and thereby self-isolating, telling myself I would reach back out when I felt better, which, was a constant cycle. So I never felt able to thoroughly enjoy my life, to relax, to be super present, to enjoy and be here for all of the beauty and the richness and the privilege and the gorgeousness that is my life. I couldn't see it. I slept poorly. I was chronically stressed, experienced anxiety. I used to experience deep depression. I felt deeply alone in my struggles. I literally felt like I was constantly thrashing to keep my head above water. And in that situation, it's really only a matter of time before one drowns, right? Whether you do or don't drown in life, whatever that means, you're going to feel that way. And that just is going to seep into everything. And it did. And as I sit here speaking to you now, the actual external aspects of my life that I wanted so badly to change have not really changed very much. But the flavor, the experience of my everyday life has changed in a revolutionary way. I wake up rested, excited, in love with my husband and my life, with a day full of possibility, rest, pleasure, meaningful connections, and important work ahead of me. I feel confident and capable of doing things that I felt dispossessed and totally incapable of doing before. My relationships are rich and vibrant and vulnerable in ways that I don't think I ever thought that they could be, to be honest. And I found my way to doing the work of my life. And being in so much uncertainty with all of this, the kind of uncertainty that in this previous state I would have found completely intolerable. And yet I'm here in this uncertainty, having fun, feeling joyful, and experiencing so much magic and beauty in my life. And that's what I want for you. And it doesn't take long. In fact, it could take as much as just one session to begin to feel the shifts from shame and hopelessness, like one of my clients right now, to excitement, possibility, remembering joy, feeling proud of who they are, feeling love towards themselves, feeling trust in themselves, trust in the flow of life, trust in the outcome, no matter how scary. We need this Every one of us deserves this. And this is what I'm here to do for you, if you're open to it. So I'm going to wrap up there. I hope this has given you a bigger window into a little of the magic of somatics. Until next time, I love you so much. You're so worthy. And everything you're looking for is already within you. It just needs a little space, a little time, a little attention to be allowed to breathe